Hello, this is Dr. Grande. Today's question is, can I analyze the case of Joseph and Mengqi Elledge? Just a reminder, I'm not diagnosing anybody in this video, only speculating about what could be happening in a situation like this. If you enjoyed this video, please like it, subscribe to my channel, and consider supporting me on Patreon. I will put the link to Patreon in the description for this video. First, I'll look at the background of this case, move to the timeline of the crime, then offer my analysis. Joseph Dwayne Elledge was born in the mid-1990s and lived in Columbia, Missouri. He went by the name Joe. After studying engineering in college for a while, Joe went to work for a company that made dental products. In 2015, he met a woman named Mengqi, who worked at the same company as his supervisor. She had been born in China and moved to Missouri to attend college in 2012. She completed her bachelor's degree before earning her master's degree in mechanical and aerospace engineering in December of 2014. Joe and Mengqi started dating in 2016. A bit of an immigration problem was plaguing Mengqi. She was not going to be permitted to remain in the United States. As it turns out, her relationship with Joe presented a solution to this dilemma. Joe proposed to Mengqi on September 8, 2017, in Rockbridge Memorial State Park. The couple married on September 22, right before Mengqi's visa expired. They lived in an apartment on the 2600 block of Eastwood Drive in Columbia. Joe stopped working in order to continue with college, so it was up to Mengqi to support them. On October 3, 2018, the couple had a daughter. Mengqi's parents came to the United States and helped care for the newborn. They planned to be there for 100 days. Joe did not get along with his mother-in-law and forced her to leave before the 100 days was up. Mengqi's mother returned to China, but communicated with her daughter once a day at a designated time. Now moving to the timeline of the crime. On October 10, 2019, at 3:35 p.m., Joe called the police, but he did not call 911. Instead, he called 311, the non-emergency line for Boone County, Missouri. Joe told the operator that his wife had gone missing. When the police arrived at his apartment, here is the story Joe supplied to them. 2 days earlier, on October 8, Joe gave his 28-year-old wife a back rub while she was in bed. This is an activity that had recently led to having sex. However, on this occasion, Mengqi rejected him. Joe left the bed at 9:30 p.m. and went into the living room. He watched videos and played video games. When he went to bed at 11:30 p.m., his wife was asleep. At 5 a.m., now on October 9, Joe woke up because his 1-year-old daughter was crying. He noticed that his wife was gone, so he checked around the apartment. His wife's phone and keys were still there, and her car was parked outside, but she was nowhere to be found. At this point, Joe decided to go back to bed because he was tired. At 8 a.m., he woke up and realized that Mengqi was still missing. Joe did not make any effort to find his wife or contact anyone about her missing status. At 10:30 a.m., using his wife's car, Joe took his daughter for a drive to Jefferson City, Missouri, before returning to Columbia. The purpose of this trip was relaxation. At 6:30 p.m., he once again drove to Jefferson City and returned home. Looking at a map online, Joe found what he thought was a large forest with walking trails in an area between Columbia and Jefferson City. He decided to take his daughter for a walk. After driving to the area, he realized that it wasn't a large forest, but rather farmland. On his way home, he decided to drive past Columbia to the town of Rocheport. There he went on a hiking trail and stayed in the area until about 9:30 p.m. He returned home at 10 p.m. On the next day, October 10, at 9 a.m., a friend of Mengqi came by the apartment looking for her. He had been sent there by her mother, who was worried because Mengqi missed their regularly scheduled time to talk. This is the first time Joe told anyone that his wife was missing. As far as Joe's relationship with his wife, he said that she had been resistant to the idea of having sex with him. He thought that she had been communicating with another man online. As the police continued investigating, what they found was not good news for Joe. There was no activity on Mengqi's financial accounts, and it seemed unusual that she would leave her daughter behind. Furthermore, Why would she leave without her phone, her keys, and her vehicle? Mengqi had kept an online journal where she wrote about how she was having an emotional affair with a man in China. She indicated that she was cold toward her husband Joe, did not care about him, and had no interest in him. She also wrote about how she realized her own value. In early October 2019, Joe accessed an application on one of his wife's electronic devices and found messages between her and her lover. At one point, she told her lover, "I want you so much right now." There were many messages involving a pronounced sexual component. A former boyfriend of Mengqi said that in late August 2019, she contacted him about finding a divorce attorney. As it turns out, Joe was also looking for information about divorce. At least the couple had one thing in common. Joe's mysterious trips right after his wife disappeared didn't make a lot of sense. He told the police that after visiting Rocheport, he went back to his apartment, but his cell phone told a different story. The phone traveled to the area of Highway 41 in the Lamani River and stayed there for about 45 minutes before returning to Joe's apartment. The police searched the river but didn't find anything. After his wife went missing, Joe communicated with a few people but never mentioned anything about the disappearance. He seemed more interested in playing the video games Borderlands and League of Legends. The relationship between Joe and Mengqi was characterized by a lot of arguing, distrust, and strife. Both of them had been secretly recording each other, trying to prove ill intent. They both wanted evidence to use against each other. Joe had recorded about 10 hours of audio, and his wife had recorded about 4 hours. Here are a few examples of what was captured in these recordings. Joe told his wife that he was ready to be done talking to her forever. He wanted a divorce, but was worried about spending a lot of money on it. Joe suggested that if his wife continued to behave in a manner unacceptable to him, it would not be pretty. He asked her, "Do you want me to hurt somebody?" Joe referred to Chinese families engaging in Chinese traditions as, quote, 1,000 worthless pieces of blank families, unquote. Mengqi explained to Joe that he was not a god, but he refuted her assertion and proclaimed that he was a god. Joe made thinly veiled threats by talking about how he conquers nature by killing it. He told Mengqi to go back to China, saying that she was not good with the best American. In Joe's apartment, the police found notes that Joe had written containing statements that closely matched what he told the police. One note contained tips for interviews, which included a reminder to refer to Mengqi in the present tense. On October 25, 2019, as the police continued working on the murder investigation, Joe was arrested for an unrelated offense. He had been accused of harming his daughter physically. On February 19, 2020, Joe received an upgrade as far as his criminal charges. He was charged with first-degree murder in connection with Mengqi's death. The state felt as though they had enough evidence, even though there was no body. As it turns out, this would not remain a problem for the state. On March 25, 2021, a hiker found Mengqi's body at Rockbridge Memorial State Park. This is the same place where Joe had proposed. The authorities ruled the manner of death homicide, but could not determine the cause of death. Mengqi had sustained 4 broken ribs. The ribs were broken clean through. Joe was connected to the disposal site not only because of the proposal, but by vegetation found on his boot. DNA from a tree next to the body matched the DNA from vegetation. Joe did not enjoy himself while waiting trial. The prosecutor said that he was the biggest complainer in the history of the Boone County Jail. Joe filed 28 grievances about all kinds of different problems. He did not like the toilets, the television, the faucets, noises from the HVAC system, and the temperature. Joe went to trial in the fall of 2021 and testified in his own defense. His story had now changed substantially. Here is what he said happened. Joe admitted that he caused the death of his wife, but said it was not intentional. On October 8, 2019, he confronted her about her affair. She pushed him out of anger. In response, he pushed her back and into a counter. This is when she broke her ribs. Despite being seriously injured, Mengqi attacked him again, and he pushed her again. This time, her head hit the floor. almost knocking her unconscious. Mengqi went to bed as Joe went for a walk. Later, Joe went to bed. When he woke up at 5 a.m., now on October 9, 2019, he found that his wife was dead. Instead of calling the police, he put her body in the trunk of her own vehicle and buried her in a shallow grave in the park where he had proposed to her. On November 11, 2021, Joe was convicted of second-degree murder. The jury was not convinced the murder was premeditated. That's why they did not convict him of first-degree murder. He was sentenced to 28 years in prison. About 4 months later, Joe received another 10 years after pleading guilty to first-degree endangerment of a child and 2 other charges. The sentences are to be served consecutively. Under Joe's plea bargain, he cannot be charged with additional offenses connected to the murder, like charges related to disposing of the body. There have been no reports about Joe's level of satisfaction with the temperature in prison. In June 2022, the prosecutor in this case, Daniel Knight, died from a self-inflicted shotgun blast. According to people who knew him, he had been in a dark place emotionally for some time prior to his death. Now moving to my analysis. Joe claims that he did not commit murder. Rather, his defense argued that he was guilty of manslaughter. It seems fairly clear that Joe was guilty of murder. His story about accidentally killing Mengqi is difficult to believe. For example, there was a substantial size difference between him and his wife, and there was no way that Mengqi went to bed after 4 of her ribs were broken. Joe didn't put hardly any effort into his accidental killing story, just like he didn't put any effort into his story about his wife mysteriously disappearing. What do I think happened in this case? This is just a theory, my opinion. Joe was self-centered, aggressive, petty, vindictive, angry, impulsive, grandiose, manipulative, deceptive, sadistic, controlling, demanding, possessive, immature, cold, callous, shiftless, had extremely low frustration tolerance, had a sense of entitlement, and was exceedingly creepy. When he became romantically involved with Mengqi, he was highly interested in having sex with her. Mengqi was also highly interested in having sex, just not with Joe. Her primary motivation to marry him was to solve her immigration problem. She entered into a loveless relationship with a husband who she found to be unattractive, uninteresting, and harmful. Mengqi quickly realized that she could obtain a more attractive and suitable partner. As she put it, she recognized her value. This was an important moment of awareness for Mengqi. The disparity between her perception of her own value and her husband's value was pronounced. She was ready to get rid of Joe, but was worried about being deported. As the relationship deteriorated further, Mengqi found a new lover. She knew this wasn't wise, but she did not care about Joe at all. She even stated as much in her online journal, fully recognizing her own detachment from her husband. Joe realized his marriage was in trouble. He told his wife it was a terrible relationship, and he was eager to end it. Playing on her fears of deportation, he threatened to accuse Mengqi of mistreating him in order to have her deported. Mengqi had been concerned about this, but considering how her new lover was in China, she was no longer as worried. Joe had lost his most powerful source of manipulation against his wife. During the evening of October 8, 2019, Joe attempted to initiate sex with his wife, but he was rejected. By this point, he was already aware that she was having an emotional affair. In a moment of rage, he murdered her, perhaps using a combination of beating and strangulation. Joe drove all around the area looking for a suitable location to bury his wife's body. Unhappy with the locations he explored, he decided to go to a place he knew well. Ultimately, the evidence against Joe was overwhelming, so he made a pathetic attempt to change his story to a tale of manslaughter. Now moving to my final thoughts. The murder in this case was likely motivated by infidelity. Joe's actions were heinous, and he was fully responsible for the murder, but there is no doubt that Mengqi took unnecessary risks. She used Joe to stay in the United States, maintained a distant relationship with him, and then had an emotional affair. Joe was an undesirable and temperamental partner who knew he was about to lose his romantic partner. There were many reasons to believe he could be violent. Joe probably believed that the major error in his life was asking Mengqi to marry him in the first place. He sought to reframe his mistake from proposal to disposal. Those are my thoughts in the case of Joseph and Mengqi Elledge. Please put any opinions and thoughts in the comment section. They consistently generate an interesting dialogue. As always, I hope you found my analysis of this topic to be informative. Thanks for watching.